Freewell sent me the all-day pack for the Mini 3. We're gonna test these out. Hey, my name is Jake and I create content here to help solo creators on the go. So I test and review lots of drones, cameras, lenses, filmmaking equipment here in Alaska, and I give you tips and tutorials on how to use them so you can tell better stories. If that's something that interests you, consider subscribing. Today we're testing out the Bright Day filter pack, ND filter pack for the Mini 3 Pro. Something I'm really excited about because this is a fantastic drone, but because it doesn't have a variable aperture, you absolutely need ND filters. In full disclosure, Freewell did send these to me, but they're not paying for this review. They don't have any input in this video, and they don't get to see this video before it's released. Now, Freewell did send me two different filter packs. This is the Bright Day pack, which has an ND4, ND8, ND16, ND32, ND64, and an ND1000. Which will cover what that ND1000 might be useful for here in a second. They also sent me the Bright Day pack, which is a combination of polarized and ND filters, which starts with ND4, 16, 32, 64, and a just circular polarizer. Very useful for photography. One of the best things about the Mini 3 Pro is the new filter design for the Mini. You snap it on by doing just a little turn, and then of course they snap right back on just like that. And because of its size, the gimbal guard will still fit on the drone without having to take the ND filter off. So to start off with, I'm going to shoot with the ND64 because it is a fairly bright day out here with lots of sunshine. And you can see my settings here on the screen. I've got my shutter speed of 1/60th because I'm shooting in 4K 30. And it's important that to get the right motion blur, you want to keep your shutter speed at 2 times your frame rate. I have a whole video explaining about the reasons for ND filters and all that right up here. It'll click up, pop in the corner. But let's do a quick flight with this, showing you what proper motion blur looks like. Then we'll do one without. So one thing you'll notice with motion blur, proper motion blur, is the blur on all of the little details, which is what you want, because otherwise it looks very unnatural to our eyes. So if you look at the grass, and if we pause it right here, you'll see natural looking motion blur. And that's what you want to emulate, because that is what our eyes see and our brains interpret when we're looking at things in motion normally. Well, here is when the drone is orbiting around a subject. The subject should stay fairly sharp in the frame, but everything else in the frame should change. All right, now let's take the ND64 off and we'll ramp up the shutter speed to compensate for our exposure, and I'll show you why you want to use ND filters, especially when you're shooting in video modes. Then we'll talk about photos. So as you can see on the screen already, it's way too bright. So what we're gonna have to do is take our shutter speed and turn it way, way up to get our proper exposure. 800, 1200, 2000. So we're gonna start there. Actually, I might lower it just a hair, maybe 1600. So 1/1600. We're gonna do the same flight as we did last time. Just fly down this meadow here. Hopefully, ideally without hitting any trees. All right, so again, flying forward, sport mode. You can see here, everything looks a little bit more jittery and a little bit more stuttery, and that's because there's no motion blur. So again, if we pause it right here, you'll see that obviously there's no motion blur. That's what causes it to look jittery and stuttery, is because the shutter speed is so high, it makes every single thing look like an individual picture. Not what you want for video. Now for photos, it's not as crucial to have obviously the same amount of motion blur, unless that's something you're going for. But there is a place where the ND1000 that Freewell's included with this pack comes in extremely handy, and also the circular polarizers come in handy. The circular polarizers are useful for dealing with saturation, how much blue, how much green you want in the sky, because they cut out the amount of reflected light. So if you especially want to deal with reflections off a surface like water, if you film a lot over water, then the polarized versions will be very useful for you. And in this case, Freewell's included a little white line on the polarizers. So if you line that line up with the direction that you're going to be flying, and line that line up in the direction that the sun will be relative to where you're flying, it will do the most amount of polarization. And the ND1000 is extremely useful for things like hyperlapses, where you want to blur out traffic or slow the motion or get a lot more motion blur in things that are moving around like cars. But it's also extremely useful when you want to get the sense of motion. For example, water. When you want to get the sense of water flowing through, you want to slow your shutter speed way down and get the motion, the blur in waterfalls, beaches, any place like that. That's where the ND1000 is going to come in extremely useful. ND filters are really crucial for something like the Mini 3 Pro because it doesn't have an adjustable aperture, and because it does have such a wide open aperture of f1.7, it's even more important to use ND filters to get the right exposure and the right amount of motion blur or the motion effects that you want, depending on if you're shooting video or photo. Now, I've purchased a lot of Freewell filters, including the one I'm using on my camera right now. They've sent me a lot. All of them have been fantastic. I've abused a lot of them and they hold up well. They have minimal color shift and are really great value. There are, of course, affiliate links in the description if you want to purchase a set for yourself. Now, if you want to learn other ways to improve your videography and photography, click or tap right there. I put together a playlist that will show you lots of different moves and ways you can improve your videos and your photos using drones. I'll see you in one of those videos. As always, if you have questions, ask me in the comments below or join my live stream Wednesday nights at 4 p.m. Alaska time, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you again soon in the next video. Cheers.